Hello, everybody. Welcome to Masters of Mash. My name is Pimpdaddysupreme. I will be your host for the next 2 hours, doing a deep dive into mashups and mashup culture with a specific emphasis on the producers who helped make mashups a worldwide phenomenon for over 2 decades now. That being said, today's guest is kind of beyond reproach because he came up at a time when everybody was already saying that mashups had not only been dead, but they were deader than they were dead. And then he went on to prove them kind of wrong. Traveled the world, wound up working with major studios, doing all kinds of stuff in the name of mashup, and is still active to this day. The person I'm talking to is none other than the founder of Bootie NYC, DJ Lobsterdust. I will be speaking with him about his legacy and about his life and about his influences. So stay tuned or stay locked in. If you can, do me a favor and go hit that heart and the follow if you're a new viewer, or go check out PDS Mix on Twitter. That way, you can get updates for when we go live, or PDS Mix on Facebook as well for all the upcoming guests and stuff like that. I will take a second to say thank you to all of you who have donated to the show in the past. It definitely helps us keep going and bringing you the stories behind your favorite mashup artists and all your favorite songs. So once again, down here at the bottom, you'll see my PayPal and Venmo. Again, right now, the Corona apocalypse, this is part of what I do. So all help is appreciated. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to bring on our guest for today, DJ Lobsterdust.
Hello.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Let me just clarify before I get some text.
Sure.
I'm not the founder of Bootie New York. I'm just the resident DJ.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I definitely figured, that you had started. I knew Bootie specifically was Adriana and Deidre with A&D, but for sure I can definitely say that you were if you weren't the founder, you were the person who helped facilitate that. Did you not book everything and?
No, see, I've never booked. I don't deal with any of that behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'm a diva. I just show up and play.
Well, before we get to that part of the story, let's start where we always do in this wonderful Masters of Mash way. Where and when were you born?
A long time ago in Israel.
In Israel.
In the 70s, during a war. So you could Google that and figure out the year.
Okay.
There's definitely a war. There was definitely a war going on.
For sure. How one of the reasons why we delve this far deep into your past is we're looking for, the role that your parents or your community or your country in this regard played in your musical tastes. I'm assuming, did your parents play music or?
Yeah, my parents were really into music when I was younger, and they bought me a turntable when I was like 3.
Wow.
Not at Techniques or anything like that. You could buy, back then you could buy kids turntables.
Yeah.
And they could play 7-inch records. And they had Beatles 7-inch records. So apparently I would spin Beatles records when I was 4. I think that's where it started. But if you notice, there's a lot of very good Israeli producers that do mashup. You had Shah Harvey and Smash and Maya and a bunch of people. And I think it's because the radio in Israel would always play everything. There was only 2 stations, and they played everything. So you would hit it into hip hop and then rock and then oldies and then new stuff and then. Whereas in most places in the world, if let's say you like hip hop and you listen to a hip hop radio station, then all you're going to listen to is hip. You're not going to get exposed to other genres of music. I think San Francisco is the same, where they just listen to everything. Where other places they're kind of narrow. So The funny thing about these two Israeli producers that I mentioned, Shahar and Smash.
Yeah.
Shahar, I mean, you know Shahar V.
Yeah.
He's done like amazing mashups. Smash is his neighbor, who just walked up and said, "Hey, I hear you're doing mashups. Like, can you teach me how to do mashups?" And then within 2 weeks, Smash was making incredible mashups, just by being Shahar's neighbor. So you gotta wonder how much more Israeli talent is hidden. People, but definitely, I had to get out of there. Let's just say that.
Well, before you got out of there, did your parents play any instruments?
Nope.
But you wound up playing an instrument in school, right?
Not in school, but I learned piano.
You learned piano. Okay, I could have sworn I'd seen something about you being in the band in high school.
I mean, yeah, we had a high school band, but it was just like it had nothing to do with school.
So
we just formed
in high school band. Like, did they assign you an instrument or?
Oh, no, this is like me and a bunch of friends started the band. It had nothing to do with the school.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the only thing it had to do is that we stole a mixer from the school, so we could have a mixer. I think it's the law. What is it called? The statute. What's that called?
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, I think we're already past that since. That
right. Nobody from Israel is going to come after you here in New York City.
We stole a mixer from school so we could use it for our rehearsal.
Well, I'm glad you got away with that, and went on to do something positive from that. I mean, if you look, that's pretty much how hip hop started. Was during the blackout, like a bunch of people looted equipment and wound up with like big sound systems that helped start things like African Bambaataa sound system and Grandmaster Flash and stuff like that. So anyway, was it you listened to the radio? Did you wind up doing any kind of? You were talking about like in the 80s that you first saw some friends do something interesting with a turntable.
Yeah, so I had a bunch of friends. I didn't have any turntables because Technics were and still are very expensive.
Yeah.
But I did have a friend that was an incredible turntablist and actually made a pretty good living DJing, even in high school. And we would do mixtapes just for fun. And one day he's like, "Hey, check this," because he was always experimenting with vinyl. He's like, "Look at this, I play this Depeche Mode song and this other song together, and it sounds amazing. Like, as this one song fades out, this one song fades in, you got like a 30-second in between where they just play on top of each other, and it sounds like a new song." And I said, "This is incredible. Like, we have to stretch this to like 2 minutes. Can you?" And he's like, "Yeah, just give me some time because I can loop it. Like, if you're really good with turntables, you could actually do loops."
Yeah.
So we put that on the mixtape, and I was right. I mean, people lost their shit. I had people from like other schools and other cities hit me up, asking me where I got that Depeche Mode mix. And like, I'm like, "Oh, we just made it ourselves." So that was like the first time. The two songs were "Flexible" by Depeche Mode and "Living on the Ceiling" by Blancmange.
Oh wow! Have you ever thought about trying to recreate that just in a production setting?
Every time I think about it, I always forget to actually do it. It probably doesn't sound as good as I thought it did back in the 80s, but back then it sounded amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, it was like, wow, you're doing these two things that aren't just hip hop overlaid everything else like that. So yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. And that was you said that was late 80s?
That was like 86. Around 86.
Okay. So it was before your high school.
Well, no, I was in high school in 86. And also at the time you had we'll get to him later. Like, Fatboy Slim was then known as Beats International, and he had a #1 song in England, in the UK, which was a mashup called "Don't Be Good to Me." Yeah. So the instrumental was The Clash, the Guns of Brixton, and the vocals was the Gap Band, "Just Be Good to Me." And he renamed it "Dub Be Good to Me" and released it, and it went to #1. And we listened to that record like on repeat for a year. So, like the concept, the seed was already planted. It never had a name.
Yeah.
Or was never recognized as a thing. It was just a cool thing. And so that's when the seed was planted. But nobody was really making mashups in the 80s. I mean, yeah, there were a couple of bands that were kind of pioneers and stuff, but like you couldn't really hear it on the radio or anything like that. But if the techniques were not that expensive, I would have just bought some and started making it myself. But that was like a big hurdle. The price, plus the 2 years you would have to spend to be good enough to do it on a turntable.
Right.
Making it was just not worth the effort.
Yeah, I had one childhood friend who had one Techniques turntable, and we would like mix stuff with a tape deck and a Techniques.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing some crazy shit. We had like two Techniques turntables, but like 3 cassette decks and 2 mixers, and we would like mix in all sorts of effects. Like we would get crazy with it.
And is there any recordings of any of this?
I mean, trying to think. The chance of one of those cassettes surviving is 0. Like I have a couple of cassettes from the 80s, but it's not music.
Yeah.
I mean, I could ask my friend if there's any chance he kept one of those cassettes, but I doubt it.
So when you were getting out of high school, you said you started a band. What was this? Can you tell me more about this band?
No, the band was just a few friends of mine. We'd get together and we would play.
What kind of music?
Rock and new wave, kind of. And, we had some gigs in Tel Aviv and stuff, but I think that's where I learned more. Like, that's when you're in a band, you learn like song structure.
Yeah.
Things like that, the basics. And then it's good because you write a song, you rehearse it, you play it in front of a crowd, and then you see, oh, this intro does not work. Let's think another way of doing this. And then that's how you learn about how to structure your songs, how to edit them, what people like, stuff like that.
In this band, were you the lead singer or the keyboardist?
No, I mean, I was the keyboardist, and then I ended up teaching myself guitar, and I did both keyboards and guitar.
Awesome. Now, when you say that you were rock and new wave, what were some of the bands that were like an inspiration to you guys?
Like we all loved Gary Newman at the time, so he was like a big inspiration. Duran Duran.
Yeah.
We were Duran Duran fans. A lot of Israeli bands that you guys don't know.
Well, here, name them. I'm sure we have people from Israel watching.
I doubt it. Machina, Foyeled, these kinds of bands, and half of us really liked heavy metal. Like half the band loved heavy metal, and half the band despised heavy metal. So that was a big cause for fights. Yeah, so it was just a combination of rock and new wave and pop and just all the stuff we liked to listen to.
I like the fact that you brought up the heavy metal because I've seen you in a bunch of Cinderella t-shirts and I've seen pictures of you like really excited about going to Iron Maiden shows. Can you talk about how metal like really like?
Here's the thing. So in Israel in the 80s, there was no metal. There was just none. Because I mean, it's a small country, so you only have like one television station, well, at the time, one television station and 2 radio stations. Mm-hmm. And whoever was in charge did not like heavy metal. So you could not hear any heavy metal on the radio or see it on TV, which means the record stores would never actually bring in any heavy metal records. So all I knew about heavy metal is that there's a band called Iron Maiden, and they have a really scary-looking monster. Eddie. Which looked really scary but cool at the same time. But in my head, I was envisioning heavy metal as just like just like noise and screaming, and I didn't really care about it till some friends of mine, they somehow discovered heavy metal through this foreign guy who was he was like a son of a diplomat. So he came to Israel from another country, and then he was like, "You guys really need to check out heavy metal because it's fucking cool as fuck." So he like brought us all these Motley Crue records and Dio and Maiden, and he had all the VHS tapes and everything you could think of. And after that, we were like, "Holy shit! Why have you been keeping this secret from us this whole time?"
Right.
So we basically, you would have to import yourself. You would have to go to a record store and say, "I want the new Guns N' Roses record," and they'll be like, "Okay, we'll order that." And then in 2 weeks, it comes, and then you buy it for like 3 times the price.
Right.
But that's what we had to do, and we started making our own heavy metal parties, and the circle just kept growing and growing until cable television came to Israel.
What year was that?
1990. Wow. And then people actually saw all the videos and were all of a sudden exposed to music that they were never exposed to. And then all of a sudden everybody was a Metallica fan and everybody was a Guns N' Roses fan. But what you will notice is that all the top mashup producers love heavy metal.
Yeah.
Go to you got the Schmoleys, you got your DJs from Mars, Adriana, everyone you come up with, they love heavy metal.
Yeah.
It's somehow a common thread throughout mashup producers. I don't know why.
Well, rock definitely. There's a lot to unpack there, and we could definitely go down that thing. But I want to talk to you real quick about growing up in Israel. Like, what was like your perceptions of Western culture growing up? And then, like, obviously there was that shift once cable TV came in, but like, how much did it affect you? Like, did it affect people around you? Like, what was the perceptions of Western culture?
When I was growing up, that was like the ideal, because Israel was just a new country with a lot of problems, and so anything that came from America or Europe, we immediately like, oh, it's amazing. Like, we want to be like America. We want to be like Europe. So that's how it used to be. So these days, it's kind of like the opposite.
Right.
It's like people are like, do we really want to be like America? No, not really. But that used to be like a thing. It's like, if you just slap the word America on it, it used to mean it's amazing. That's how it used to be. And like I said, there were a lot of gatekeepers in Israel, keeping a lot of culture away. Like, there was no metal culture, there was no hip-hop in Israel before cable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the second MTV came into Israel and started playing those videos, everybody was into metal, everybody was into hip-hop, so I mean, these days you go to Israel and it's indistinguishable from any other Western country. And actually, like I said, back in the day we only had 2 television stations. Now in Israel you have 10 times more television stations than I do here, so it's like everything's fine.
So,
but I always watched American television, and I always wanted the kind of life I saw in American television shows. Like, the American way of life appealed to me, and not the Israeli way.
I always hear stories, specifically from people from like Russia and stuff like that, but from other countries as well, that perceptions of Western culture, especially during the 80s, was women run around in bikinis, and blue jeans, guys wear blue jeans. And then you have everybody's got a helicopter and a machine gun. Was that your perception?
Well, that's the helicopter machine gun, but okay. So like when I was in the army, which was not fun.
Right. And will you explain that for our viewers, that right after high school that you have to?
you get drafted for 3 years in the Israeli army, which is not an easy army to be in.
Right.
And and you get, depending, but you get to go home every once in a while. You get leave, and then you get to come home. And by then there was already cable, so I'd be in the army. I'm 18, 19, right? I get home, I turn on MTV, and there was a show called like MTV Jams or whatever, and all it is people my age partying for 3 hours. That was the show, right? It's like girls in bikinis, DJs, swimming pools. That was the show. Adriana, what was the name of that show? MTV Jam? I don't know. So I'm like, why am I? I'm like the same age. I should be on that beach with those girls partying.
Right.
Like that should be me. Why am I in fucking army boots? So that's why. The perception of America is what America puts out on television, and what they put out on television is girls in bikinis. Everybody having a good time.
Right.
So but like if you go, like if you actually, the main thing about America, which people forget, is it is a free country. Like in Israel, it's not like a completely free country because you have a lot of religious people and there's a lot of politics, and there's not that much freedom to be a freak or just go out and do your own thing. You're more expected to conform. In a lot of countries, you're just expected to conform and be like everybody else. Mm-hmm. What I liked about America is people are like, whatever, just do your thing. We don't care. Just whatever your thing is, just do it.
Yeah.
Like I said, in recent times, things have kind of went going a little crazy. America's not what it used to be, but at least at the time, it seemed like the best place to live.
Yeah.
And to do my thing.
My hopes are that the time that we're living in right now is a temporary thing. We just have to keep working at it.
Yeah, I think things will be all right in the end. No place is perfect. Yeah. You go anywhere in the world and they just complain.
For those of you watching much later than this air date, this was filmed, or this was recorded in July of 2020. Just go look it up. Anyway, back to the questions. So when you were in the military, was there any kind of did it change your musical tastes at all? Was there anything you got exposed to, or things, that were more, I don't know, like aggressive, or things more emotional?
Not really. The Israeli army has the best radio station in Israel is the army radio station, believe it or not. Because they'll just draft really young people and I tried getting into that. I applied for the radio, but that's like the dream job everybody wants. So I didn't get in.
Right.
But so after midnight on the military radio, they have this thing called no one gets any sleep. If you translate it, it's like no sleep, because usually you're on guard duty or whatever.
Yeah.
But all it is one really good radio DJ spinning whatever they want from midnight to 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And they would spin incredible stuff. And I would listen to it every time even though I was technically breaking the army laws, I would always have some earphones and I would always listen to it while I was on patrol. So those 3 years listening to the army station really influenced me.
That's awesome. So once you got out of the army, somebody, you told me that somebody handed you a brochure?
My friend had a girlfriend who went to New York to do a summer semester at the School of Visual Arts. And when she came back, she brought a brochure from the School of Visual Arts. And when I flipped through it, I'm like, oh. Because I didn't want to go to university or college and study law or medicine or any of that stupid shit. But the School of Visual Arts had a computer art department where you could learn animation and anything that has to do with computers.
Right.
So I just applied and went to study.
And it was just that easy. It was like, I'm going to go to New York. And there I am.
Well, no, you gotta get a portfolio together, and there's an interview, and then I mean, it's not simple just leaving everything and moving, but.
Well, I'm assuming that your parents had enough money to be able to send you stuff like that, or did you send it with your own money? How did this happen?
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, my parents helped. Back then, it wasn't like that expensive. Like in the mid '90s, it was maybe a third of what it costs now.
Yeah.
And I also, I applied to be like if you work for the school, that's half tuition. They pay half your tuition. So I worked for the school. And again, even though I wasn't allowed to, I would do like these freelance gigs. So I figured if I am lucky after school, I'll get to stay here if someone offers me a job, and that's what happened.
What was the job that they offered you, or what was your first job that like you were able to apply for citizenship?
It was just doing post production at the studio, and well, the whole reason I went to that school and started studying that is because I used to love. Back when MTV was MTV, they had amazing graphics and animations.
Yeah, pioneers.
Incredible stuff. Like every time you tune in, you'd see something new you've never seen before. So that was my inspiration. And as it happened, either by luck or fate, my thesis advisor, Miles Tanaka, was the guy who made the MTV Moon Man animation. He worked at MTV. He was the first. He was the guy. Like he told me the whole story, how MTV started, how it was all one big mistake, and why they used the Moon Man and all that stuff. And then after I quit school, he referred me to his colleague, who was the first graphic designer at MTV. And I ended up working at her studio for like 10 years and learned all her secrets. And back then they did everything analog. Like they didn't have computers. They had to do everything like with Xerox machines and really primitive. But man, the things that they do to this day, everything you see on TV today is a direct continuation of what MTV started.
Yeah.
The way people shoot, the way people edit, the way people do graphics on screen, completely flipped on its head. Yeah, so if the chat, basically the story of MTV was cable television was new. So they went and they did a bunch of channels. You had a channel for kids, you had a channel for movies, you had a channel for comedy, for sports. They covered all their bases. And 2 weeks before launch, someone said, "Oh shit, we completely forgot about the teenage and college demographic. We have no channel for and they're really important."
Yeah.
So as it happens in corporate America, somebody just slammed the phone and said, "Make it happen." No budget, no plan. In 2 weeks, get a channel going. So they brainstormed and they said, well, kids love music, and music videos are free because they're promos.
Right.
Like the label just send us hundreds of these music videos. And we can just do a music channel. And they're like, well, what about the visuals? They're like, well, we'll get disc jockeys. We'll call them video jockeys. And then, but there's no budget. They're like, okay, well, the Library of Congress has free footage that you can use, right? So they went through the Library of Congress and they saw the moon landing and they're like, shit, this looks good. Let's just use this for free. And that's how they took the moon landing footage, Xeroxed it, drew the MTV logo with the flag on it, slapped it on the air, and then that was history in the making.
I always find it so amazing that like people that are closer to you and I's age often have like decades worth of like MTV advertisements and MTV like logos and like all these music videos like ingrained in us, and it is such a like you said, you see reflections of that all throughout culture now. And it's like, I wish there was a better way to be able to explain that to some of the younger people today, or the people that are our age that missed out on that. Like, you can read a book or whatnot, but it's not going to give you that feeling that, we had when we first saw MTV for what it was, and experienced all that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just not. I mean, Gen X was actually the official definition of Gen X is were you born before or after MTV? That's how big MTV is. Like, that's like a cultural milestone. And I think that milestone has absolutely no relevance for newer generations.
Yeah.
That were born into the internet. Mm-hmm. You were born into the internet. Something like MTV seems almost draconian. I have to sit on my sofa and wait 2 hours till my favorite video comes up, because that's what we had to do, right? If a new, we would have to sit there on the sofa and just wait patiently till our favorite song came up, and then we're like, yes, But today that sounds primitive. It's like, why can't I just go on YouTube and get what I want immediately? So the whole concept of MTV means nothing today.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where. Pretty much, and let's not go into the whole issue of scrambled porn. Which only in the 80s you would know what I'm talking about. The scrambled porn. Oh my god.
Yeah, I was lucky or unlucky enough, I guess, as a small child. My parents had a satellite dish, and they would. The way that satellite dishes worked is that when you wanted to see a specific channel, you had to type in the code for the satellite and wait 10 minutes for it to turn around and link up with the satellite. And the satellite often wouldn't just be one channel. It would lease time. So as a kid, I remember this terrible, terrible story of I had a friend of mine, I think it was like 4th grade, came over to the house and we're pressing buttons, on the TV, and my mom is in a whole other room or whatnot. And we finally get a channel up, and it's some super religious, the American Jesus Network or whatever else, blah, blah, blah. And as we're sitting there just kind of not knowing how to work the new TV, it says, the American religious blah, blah, blah has ended its broadcast day. And it does the screen, and then it goes to black, and then it comes up with, and now, American triple ecstasy. And my mom's like, what kind of snack do you guys? Oh my God. Turning it off. But yeah. The scrambled porn I got on my dad's side.
The scrambled porn, basically, cable was analog. So the porn was scrambled. They ran it through some chip that completely messed up the image. But if you're over 18 and paid the money, it would send a signal to your cable box to unscramble it. And again, there was no internet, there was no access to porn, and if you're a horny teenager, but there was a glitch in the system where every 15 minutes they would send a signal and it would reset.
It would straighten up for a minute.
You would have a minute of porn, of uninterrupted, unscrambled porn. So you would sit there, just. Sometimes it would take 30 minutes, sometimes it would take an hour, but they would just sit there and just wait for it. And then you're like, oh my God, boobies, yes. And then boop, it's gone.
But for the most part, you'd be looking at purple and green and blue squiggle boobs.
It's like a swirly psychedelic mess. And then every once in a while it gets unscrambled and you get to see the porn and then back to scrambled. So I guess if you're what I'm saying is if you're a kid today, those days, you're like, I wouldn't want to live back then. It sounds horrible. I can't get porn. I can't get music.
Right.
But I think it was actually better because it forced us to use our imagination more and make do with what we have.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have Spotify. That means only the records in your record collection. That's all you have to listen to. So you would actually listen to those records so many times, and every time you listen to it, you would hear new things, stuff like that.
I think it's funny when you bring up that example that a lot of kids nowadays are going to have that perception of oh, well, I have Spotify, I don't need to own any records. But I'll tell you right now, like, I've got over 7,000 records, and most of the mixes on these records aren't available on Spotify. I mean, while Spotify has a very large, amount of music on there, just like the mashups that we make, they're not on there. It's a walled garden, and that can change at any moment due to, like, if an artist says, I don't want my music up on Spotify, they can pull it down. So it's like, when do you think this like access versus ownership thing is going to swap back to, like, people, like, wanting to buy again?
I don't think it's going to swap.
Okay.
It's just two groups of people. Because when I talk to people about it, they're like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Everything I need is on Spotify. Why would I have to go look for other things? There's like this niche of people who are like music aficionados or collectors or whatever, that we are, that Spotify and Apple Music is never going to be what we want. Like, because if I wanted like the 12-inch version of some obscure 80s track that came out in 1983, I'm not going to find that on Spotify.
Right.
I can go on SoulSeek, or I can do a Google search and I can find it.
Yeah.
But I can't find it on Spotify. And like you said, a record label can decide next year that they don't like Spotify, and then it's all gone.
Right.
So
we're still at the whims of an industry.
For most people, I would say for 99% of the population, there's no need for anything besides the Spotify. Like,
right.
I think there was like they did this study, and they about radio, what radio plays, and I think 95% of the people said they only want to listen to songs they already know. Like, that's what's out there. Like, most people, they don't care. Like, they just want to hear what they want to hear, and they don't want to dig deep. So you'll have the Spotifys for regular people, and then you'll have whatever option there is for the music collectors. Like, I mean, vinyl, there's more people buying vinyl now than ever.
Yeah.
Because, so I don't think it's going to go back. It's just going to be, some people want physical ownership, and some people don't care.
Yeah.
Some people want to dig and find hidden gems, and some people just want to eat whatever they're spoon-fed by Spotify.
Right.
It's all good.
Well, that's kind of our role as DJs too, is to be able to be, tastemakers, be able to say, hey, you should listen to this kind of thing, and push people in directions.
Because we can now really surprise people with music they've never, like, coming out of left field. And like, where the hell did you find this? Well, I didn't find it on Spotify, that's for sure.
That's right.
But, that's one thing about, I mean, people like to put down Gen Z all the time and say that they're a bunch of clowns. But here's what I think. This is the first generation that was born into the age of information, meaning even as babies, they could just push a button and anything they wanted information-wise is just there for them, right? Like, that's never happened in human history. Like, when we were growing up, and like, oh, I want to listen to an Elton John song. Like, we couldn't just press a button and hear it. Like, nope. But what happens is there's just so much shit out there. You know how much music is being cranked out every day? Yeah. Like, you go on Beatport, there's like hundreds of singles every day on Beatport coming out on YouTube, on this, on that. So so Gen Z has become the first generation that knows how to curate all this insane amount of information that comes out, right? Like, so if you go on like a Twitch channel, one of these Gen Zers on their TikToks, I don't know where the fuck they're finding this music, but they find some incredible stuff. Like, I Google it and it takes me like 2 hours to find what they were playing, right? Because it's so hidden. But what they're good at is just finding all these things, like sifting through just massive amounts of crap and finding all these things. Like, they know where to look for it. They know where to find it. So I think, they do it much better than us. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like navigate through the online jungle.
So since we're talking about being kids, and we left off when you were 25, 25ish, in college. Did you graduate when you were 25, or you went to school when you were 25 to college?
Yeah. I mean, I went backpacking after high school. I went backpacking in Europe for a couple months. Then did the army. Then got a job. So I only started college in America when I was 25, because I had already been working for like 3-4 years.
Where'd you go in Europe?
Before the army, I went to England, Holland, France, Switzerland. Am I forgetting anything? No, that's about it. It was like a month or two.
All right. So so you came to America. You went to school. You got a job. You were already in that daily grind. And then with your perceptions of Western culture the way they were, what was your new reality? Were you just like, oh, well, where are my pools with all the girls in bikinis?
Well, it's a little. I mean, the thing is, when you go to college, I mean, even though it's art school, the curriculum is pretty fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's like nonstop school. So like 18 hours a day, you're just doing school stuff. So you're not really worried about the other stuff. But I loved it. I mean, because at the time, I was like obsessed with video games. And I mean, back then, not a lot of people played video games in Israel.
Are we talking like Doom? Are we talking about Duke Nukem?
Well, yeah. I mean, I love Doom and all that. But like anything that came out on PlayStation, arcades, anything you can think of. So I come to America, and everybody's got a PlayStation. Everybody knows how to play video games, and we would like sneak into like the auditorium and plug our PlayStations into like the giant theater screen.
Wow.
And do like Street Fighter matches and stuff. So, I got what I wanted. It was like fun. A lot of, just hanging out in dorms, playing video games, drinking, doing whatever. It wasn't like, because it's New York, it's not like the college you see in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
In the movies, you see the big campus and all that stuff.
Right.
In New York, it's just a bunch of buildings. So you don't get that experience, but you still have dorms. And, you still have parties and all that stuff.
Which borough did you move into, and are you still there?
No, well, when you're in school, they give you housing. So I was in Manhattan.
Okay.
And then after school, I moved to Queens because Manhattan was too expensive.
And you're still in Queens, right?
Still in Queens, yeah. Yep.
All right. Wait, is it now? I know, like certain New Yorkers, it's like my borough is the best. Are you one of those people where it's like you rep Queens?
I can tell you for a fact, Queens is not the best. But I mean, I love where I live because it's only 10 minutes from Manhattan, so I can always. But it's very quiet, so I can just. I mean, it's very chill where I live. Very quiet. You wouldn't even know that 2020 was going on if you just lived in my block. You would think it's just a normal year. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have any allegiance to Queens, really. I don't think anybody does.
So
I mean, maybe if you're like one of those, like in Corona, Queens, or like one of those big neighborhoods, but most people aren't that proud that they're from Queens.
So you being in New York City, and you're out of school, you're doing freelance, or you weren't freelance, you were actually working. Was it freelance? What was it? That you're doing post production. In what kind of a capacity? Were you working for a firm, or was somebody booking you? Did you have management?
Well, technically, as a foreign student, you're not allowed to work, except for the school, which I did. But there's a loophole where you can have It's called a paid internship for credit. So you're basically a paid intern, and you get credits, like semester credits for it. But technically, it's a loophole where you could actually get a job and just say that it's part of school. So my first job in America was for a porn company that hired me. Now, obviously, when I went to the school and told them I had found a paid internship, I didn't say this is a porn company. I gave them like their tax. Like every porn company has a legit name for tax purposes, right? So the name, I can't remember the name, but it was a very corporate sounding name, right? And I'm like, here's this, it's a digital web company, and so they just signed off on it. But I was actually working. I got a salary and everything for a porn site while I was in school.
Now, you were saying that kind of work was actually pretty innovative in the same way that like MTV was innovative.
Well, the porn industry really was innovative. They were the first ones to use credit card transactions. They were the first ones to do video. So in that department, yeah, they were definitely ahead of the curve. Like nobody was doing credit cards back then, except porn companies. And they were the company I worked for was making $4 million a month.
Wow.
Like it was just a license to print money.
Wow.
And and that's that's when it was hard as a student, because you do something as a student and you do it wrong. Nobody yells at you, but when you do it in a job, they'll yell at you and they'll tell you this is crap. So that was kind of hard in the beginning, but I did learn. They would always say, this design has to translate into dollars and cents. You're not translating into dollars and cents. Make it more flashy or whatever. Right? So
right.
At the end of the day, everything you do as an artist does have to translate into dollars and cents, like no matter what you're doing, right? So, I mean, it's the same thing with Bootie. It's like when you DJ, everything has to translate into dollars and cents. How much did we make at the door? How many people bought alcohol?
Yeah.
And that's kind of your responsibility. How much alcohol gets consumed during your set? That's you're responsible.
Yeah, that's a DJ standard for sure.
So it's important. It's like because I mean you can't you can't just hand the audience everything they want, right? That's too easy.
Right.
But at the end, but at the same time, you can't just be I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to play whatever I want.
Yeah, you have to move the crowd.
You have to establish dominance over the room, but at the same time, give people what they want. Even though but not the way they expect it. Let's just say.
Now I want to put a pin in what you just said, because I want to bring it back later when we start talking about more about you DJing with Bootie. Let's go into the beginnings of when you first started hearing or knowing about like the UK bootleg scene and the early beginnings of mashup culture, like say 99 to 2002 era. How did you come across it?
So the seed has been planted, the whole 2 songs at the same time seed.
Yeah.
So I was always looking for DJs that did that. Some of the hip hop DJs would do that. They would call it a blend.
Yeah.
In college I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and he said, "Oh, well, then you have to see Andy Smith." I'm like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "Oh, he's the Portishead DJ," and I love Portishead. Like, but I didn't know they had a DJ. So basically, Portishead have their own DJ called Andy Smith, and he does all the scratching on the albums, and he goes on tour with them, and he's part of the band. But my friend said, I heard this mix that he did, and he's just all he does is he never plays one record. Like he usually plays 2 records at the same time, but he does all these crazy things. So you have to see him. So I went to see him because he came to America, and he was right. He was just he played like Beatles over James Brown, and then Portishead over James Brown, and like all these crazy combinations, and he was doing it all on turntables. And but he was the switch was he wasn't doing like a little bit like all the other hip hop DJs. It would just maybe do like 2 minutes at a time. His whole set was that. Like how many records can he mix at the same time? So that was like a big thing, like watching Andy Smith do it. Because he did these incredible mashups on 2 turntables while smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer at the same time. I'm like, damn, that's a pro DJ. That's a guy that's been DJing a long time. Like he never stopped drinking his beer, never stopped smoking a cigarette. Like he's got the cigarette, the beer, and he's like, this and then I discovered what's his name, Z Trip.
Yeah.
Who did the whole album on Easy Listening. Volume
1.
I listened to it a couple weeks ago. I mean, it doesn't hold up that well, but it's still like a landmark album.
Yeah.
And they were doing it's DJ Z Trip, DJ P. They were doing everything again on turntables, but it was like they were doing real mashups. Like you could actually isolate 3 minutes of it and be like, oh, this is like a mashup. And so, but again, the whole fucking turntable thing was always a hurdle. I'm like, I'm a student. I'm a starving art student. I can't afford 2 techniques in a mixer. It's just not going to happen. So
yeah.
So then when the guys from England started doing it on computers, that's when I started taking notice, because I'm like, okay, now we're talking.
And you came across that first on like Audio Galaxy or one of the file sharing sites. You downloaded a mashup and was like,
that was on all the file sharing sites back then. I know for a fact that Go Home Productions, Mark Vidler, released all his stuff on Audio Galaxy back in the day. That was his favorite. I don't think anybody remembers Audio Galaxy, but
it's been mentioned a couple of times in these interviews on my program.
They were like the best place to find like new cutting edge stuff. And but all the file sharing had mashups in them. They just weren't tagged.
Yeah.
So I had no idea what these things were, who made them, or why. That was like the big thing for me. I'm like, why would you make this? Like, I understand if you're a DJ and you're playing in front of a crowd and you want to impress them.
Yeah.
You would do this. But to sit down on a computer and do it, and then just dump it on the internet, like what? Why? Like who are you? Who's your audience? Like why did you do it? Like
well, you were the audience. Like, I was the audience.
Well, yeah. Eventually, I understood, and I think Mark Vidler did an interview back then, and he said the record industry is finished. He's like, we don't need the record industry because we can distribute our own music. We don't need distribution. We don't need recording. We don't need anything. And he said that 5 years before the industry crumbled into dust. So, but again, there was a hurdle because back then you really needed an expensive computer and expensive software to do these. Like you had to be an audio engineer and have Pro Tools. So again, I couldn't make my own because I just couldn't afford Pro Tools and a workstation.
But you had that urge. You were like, I can do this. I can mash this up.
Over time, the urge got bigger because the stuff I was listening to wasn't being mashed up. It was always like Destiny's Child or something.
Yeah, it was stuff that was available at the time. Is mainly acapellas that were available on 12-inch that had been ripped, or from CD that had been ripped and shared on all Audio Galaxies. Generally, with those early acapellas.
Yeah, so back then, really. Yeah, so you had to have an expensive computer and expensive software and access to all these acapellas and things.
Yeah.
But I said to myself, as soon as I can actually run one of these programs on my laptop, I'll start my own. Which happened around 2005. I think when I started playing around with the Sony Acid. Mm-hmm. And I did a couple of things on that, and then it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to. But again, these are just softwares where you could just download it and just start making mashups. It took me a couple months to figure it out.
Yeah.
But once I did,
Ooh, hold on. Your video has decided to jump into a different size. Let me resize you real quick. You had mentioned a Vice magazine article about that had really kind of tuned you into a lot of this as well, especially Bootie and what was going on on the West Coast.
Yeah, at the time I was reading Vice a lot. For those who don't know, Vice started as a magazine before they became a new media empire or whatever they are now. And they were like super hipster. And they did a review. First of all, I thought only people in London made mashups. That's what I thought. From the little information that I had,
yeah,
it seemed to be a British thing, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, they invented punk and all those things. So then there was on Vice, they had a review of the best mashups in the world are from San Francisco. Mm-hmm. The album. And I was like, there's people in San Francisco making mashups? What the fuck? That doesn't sound right. But they gave the album like their highest ratings, which Vice almost never does. So that's when I started checking out, the American mashup scene. And turns out in America they were making a lot more mashups than in England. And I don't know how they got that CD released, but it was a really good one.
Well, at some point, I'm sure we will talk to somebody to find out exactly how that CD got released. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that somebody in the chat room probably knows how that happened. But we'll get to that here in a bit because I want to talk.
So basically, Vice loved mashups when they started because they were so new and so cutting edge and nobody had ever heard. So obviously hipsters are going to be all over it, right? But the second mashups got popular, they turned and they said mashups were like the dumbest, stupidest thing in the world and they want nothing to do with it. And they gave Go Home Productions' album the worst rating.
And that was the 2007 Mashed album with the mixer on the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which the problem with that album is that I think I read it took 2 years to get all the clearance.
That's right.
So by the time the songs came out, they were already stale. Like nobody wanted to listen to those songs.
Yeah.
Where the good thing about mashups is that as soon as like a new Dua Lipa song comes out, boom, you want to make that mashup. You don't want to wait 2 years to have that mashup released because then it means nothing, right?
Well, I wouldn't say it means nothing, but it definitely doesn't have the impact that you probably meant it to have the moment you wanted to drop it.
Yeah. So.
Now I'll tell you, I have to.
The hipsters turned on mashups pretty quickly.
Well, let me explain something, or not explain something. Let me show some of the things that have been said on this program before, and some of the things that I've heard over the years, and even just my own perceptions of what's gone on within this. Is that the moment that mashups were made, they were dead. Like you talk to Freelance Hellraiser, you talk to any of those people that started the entire thing. They did it in their little club scene, and once it got stale in their club scene, they were like, we did that. It's over. And then it went outside of their club scene, and it was like, oh, it's fresh. And then, the press got a hold of it, and it's like, oh, it's commercial. It's over. And that's like 2002, 2003, right? And so here you're talking about 2005. Here's a new outlet. Vice has got it. And they're like, this is the coolest thing. And then 2 years later, they're saying, oh, mashups are dead. And yet here we are, 20 years later, Bootie Mashup is thriving on Twitch. You've got mashup artists on YouTube getting hundreds of millions of views, with One Board Jew or with, DJ Cummerbund, stuff like that. And so mashups have never it's one of those like was it The King is Dead, Long Live the King? Mashups have always been kind of like that.
Well, here's the thing, like growing up in the 80s, I vividly remember so many people saying hip hop was dead and so many people saying metal was dead, yet here we are.
And here we are.
People still love hip hop, people still love metal. So every time everybody says X is dead, I always laugh because it's like, no, It's never
you're just not looking hard enough, is what I always say.
It dead maybe in like the mainstream view, like hip hop was like it exploded, then people declared that it was dead, but the people who really liked hip hop never stopped listening to hip hop. You know, same thing with metal. Like the heavy metal used to be on MTV. Every other video was metal, right? Then they got sick of it and they didn't play any metal. But people who love metal still keep listening to metal. It's still around, right? So,
yeah, it just really depends on who's in control, you know, because like MTV, you know, it switched all like 97 or whatnot. The hip hop changed into the shiny, what they called the shiny suit era with like Puffy and Big, and all boy bands and girl bands, you know, which we had thought was dead because there was like that almost like the disco demolition, but for New Kids on the Block. You remember how like how much people loved and hated New Kids on the Block, and then for it to come back in like the late 90s was.
I mean, the 90s were weird because everybody went alternative all of a sudden. And alternative is not meant to be mainstream. It's meant to be alternative.
Yeah.
And then right after alternative, you got Spice Girls. So it's like, oh, well, nothing's changed, really. They're always going to come back to the Spice Girls and Backstreet Boys and whatever.
Yeah.
But with mashups, I mean, I declared retirement at least 5 times, but people still love them, so I keep coming back.
People in the chat are joking that your cat Tibby is playing with the video settings because there's something going on throttling. That no, your cat really isn't. I'm sure it's just we have a little bit of a throttled connection, so it's resizing the video. I apologize for those watching. Hopefully, it's not too distracting.
And I'd like to I gained 30 pounds during lockdown. That's why my face is so round.
I was expecting you in your swim trunks. You know, you're supposed to be like cut, right?
I'm gonna. It's not gonna stay like this. I'm gonna lose the pounds. I'm gonna go back to exercising like I used to.
Right. Don't worry, you'll be a sex symbol before you know it.
I used to run every day, but then New York got hit pretty bad, right, with the whole Corona thing.
Yeah.
So there was like a whole month where I didn't even leave my apartment.
Yeah.
You know, even to throw out the garbage. I would throw out the garbage from my balcony into the garbage can. So that's when I started getting lazy and gained those 30 pounds. But
well, I'm glad you did that because you're here to talk to us now. Because living in New York City during that surge, I can see exactly why you didn't want to leave your place.
Yeah, exactly. Also, that time meant, well, what am I going to do now that I can't leave the house? And that's when the whole Twitch thing started. So now I have something to do. Because trust me, when I'm bored and I have nothing to do, very bad things happen. So it's good that I have something to fill my time while I'm locked up.
And for those of you who are wondering, that's twitch.tv/Lobsterdust.
Yes.
Is the handle.
Or Bootie Mashup. Bootie Mashup also has a Twitch channel.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm starting to see every fucking DJ on the planet start a Twitch channel. Like I just watched Carl Cox. He started a Twitch channel. Well, because what else are they gonna do?
Right. Yeah. If anything, I'm really hoping that enough performers, especially DJs, will occupy this space that the industry will be forced to be like, well, we have to find some sort of licensing. We have to find some sort of way to allow them to continue to do it.
Well, I can tell you based on the last 15 years that a war is coming. The labels will come for Twitch and they will demand money and takedowns. It's going to happen. Yep. They're not doing it now because if they do it now, they're going to look like Scrooge, like the evil greedy capitalist, because every DJ is going to be like, well, we're not going to have any way to pay rent if you shut down our streaming, right? But as soon as things go back to normal, they will demand Twitch either pay them millions of dollars or shut it all down. And then we're going to see, hopefully, Twitch will put their foot down. And Twitch is owned by Amazon, so their daddy is pretty big. right? If your dad is Amazon, then you can put your foot down and say, no, we're going to let these people live stream whatever they want. And then ideally it will be like YouTube, where they were just shutting down everything. And now it's more likely that they'll just give all the ad revenue to whoever owns the copyright instead of shutting it down. It just makes more sense. So it's possible that in the future, all ad revenue and most of the Twitch revenue will have to be split to the record labels. So you'll make a lot less money streaming, but at least you won't have to live in fear of getting shut down.
Well, since we're on this topic, I know that in several interviews in the past, like in 2008, you turned around and made it a point to tell John Nelson over at Some Assembly Required that mashups are not a crime. And in 2011, you did a quote in another interview with Bootie Rio where you said, and here's your quote, "I also believe that at some point in the future, copyright laws will have to change, as they no longer reflect the reality of the modern world in which we live. This applies not only to America, but to the whole world, because today, everything is global."
So guess what? They did change, but for the worse.
Right.
They didn't change for the better. They put all these new laws that make it impossible to post mashups on anyone.
Right.
Actually make it a crime. Like when I post a mashup on YouTube, technically it's a crime.
Yeah.
Piracy. But it's saying mashup is piracy is like, like back in the day in New York, people used to sell pirated CDs on the street, which was like an exact copy of the CD for $3, right?
Yeah.
That's piracy. But we're not doing that. We're not selling you an exact copy of the song. We're taking that song, completely deconstructing it, creating something new. Technically, it's covered by fair use, which says if something is transformative.
I'm not sure if you remember the Diplo Major Lazer MIA album or mixtape that is now on vinyl called, was it Piracy Funds Terrorism Volume 1?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Also, I saw an interview saying that because of copyright law, that whole MIA era cost him a lot of money. Like he was almost broke.
Wow.
Because of copyright.
Well, I'm glad he turned that around.
Yeah. He said he lost a lot of money because he used all those samples and did all those crazy mashups and stuff. Right now, no. I mean, eventually they're gonna have, like you said, like a guy like Cumberbund has so many fucking views on YouTube. How are you gonna shut this guy down? It's crazy, right? So why not? Also, if you're a record label, don't be a fucking idiot. You got a guy like Cumberbund with a huge following. If he's gonna do a mashup of one of your old catalogs, that's only gonna do you good. Like. People are going to be like, oh, man, I forgot about that song, Maybe I should look it up, right? They're not going to say, oh, well, now that I've heard this mashup by Cumberbund, I'm never buying a CD or music ever again. So, if anything, we're only promoting the music. We're not taking away their business. We're only promoting these songs.
Yeah.
Because what's the most common thing people say when you make mashups? Oh, man, I used to hate this song when it was in its original version, but now I love it when it's mashed up, right? So I just did you guys a favor. Why you got to send the cease and desist?
Well, I think there's something there to be said about like we need to be able to make this legal, because even within the mashup community, you look at so many mashup artists that they spend their time, making all these great mashups and really, helping create a scene and uplifting platforms and doing all this other stuff. And eventually they realize that there's no money in it and they go, well, I need to become a real musician. And they try to make their own, productions and their own. And some are successful and some aren't. But more importantly, that same ethic is employed by the platforms that are created. Like, think about SoundCloud. Like, SoundCloud wouldn't be where it was if it wasn't for DJs and for remixers and people doing mashups on their platform. And then the moment they were able to say, hey, we've got hundreds of millions of people signed up for our service. And then there's this illegal part that, while it is our core base, is keeping us from really monetizing this. or like making the most money from this. And so remember, they wound up deleting everybody. They wound up deleting everybody's accounts. There was a whole huge backlash against SoundCloud, but it's become this thing where it's like platforms will do that.
Lobsterdust, the @Lobsterdust SoundCloud is banned for life.
Yeah.
Because of all my copyright strikes. But I mean, what happened with SoundCloud? Again, the record industry mafia. SoundCloud was about to go out of business, and the record industry came and said, "We will finance you, but in exchange, you need to give us access, and we can choose who to ban." Like basically, they gave the delete the ban button was handed over in exchange for their financial assistance, and as soon as that happened, they just because they thought it would be better for their business. I don't really understand it, but that's what they did. Then about 2 years later, SoundCloud came out and said, "Oh, we're no longer going to delete people for doing this stuff." But for me, it was already too late.
The damage was done. Banned. Same here. How many followers did you have before, you got deleted? Do you remember?
It's close to 10,000.
Yeah.
And definitely millions of plays. And that was the best way to put the best. I mean, I stopped posting on my website. I just posted on SoundCloud websites anymore.
Once social media platforms came on, like, MySpace and Facebook specifically, it killed a lot of forums.
So they reversed their policy a few years ago, which is good, but they'll still take down. I mean, I still have mashups taken down today on SoundCloud. They just don't ban you.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've talked to people who work at Spotify. I said, well, what? Spotify has remixes. Why can't you just play mashups? And instead of one artist getting the royalties, you'll have two artists getting the royalties. It's just a different kind of contract.
It's kind of funny, too, because like you talk to Rhythm Scholar, and who does, remixes, but he does kind of mashup remixes where he'll use like a bunch of different samples. And I had a talk with him like probably about 5 to 6 years ago where he specifically was saying, he's like, I don't tag any of my stuff mashups. He's like, I tag it a remix because the moment that somebody reads that it's a mashup, then they don't take it seriously or they think it's illegal and there's all these things that come with it. So I just name it all a remix. And it's like, while I can see why he wants to do that, I think it also kind of takes away from the culture a little bit. But then again, if it keeps you safe, I mean, there's something to be said there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, that being said, it's not like Rhythm Scholar could actually just go up and upload his remixes to Spotify.
Right.
Because actually the process of getting your remix on Spotify is pretty complicated. But it's possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what I said to all these people in the industry, I said, look, we know the demand is there. People love mashups. They listen to it all the time. Illegally, I guess. They've already been made. All you got to do is put it on Spotify and you get all the money. We don't even want your money.
Yeah.
Just put us on Spotify. Take all the money. All you have to do is split it between the artists. So you have a whole treasure trove of material just waiting for you to put on Spotify. It's literally just money waiting for you to take it. Why won't you do this?
Well, I think that keeps us one step behind, and it allows them to hog all the money. Because what happens is that once they give you the ability to say, "Okay, we'll let you do it,"
I don't care about Spotify. But what they told me is yes, but the kind of money you're talking about is peanuts, and nobody gives shit about peanuts in this industry, right? So, for example, my friend who works at Spotify, they just signed what's his name, Joe Rogan. Like $1 million. That to them makes sense. We pay Joe Rogan millions of dollars. Joe Rogan brings in people. Like mashups, they don't understand. They're like, okay, why should I even bother with this? Because at the end of the day, it's not gonna make us millions of dollars. So why should we even bother? Like Joe Rogan can bring us millions of dollars, so yeah, we'll bother with that. But if mashups can't bring in millions, no one's gonna take time in their day to, reconfigure the whole music industry to have mashup
Well,
stream.
I think that's also part of the narrative, though, is that if you turn around and keep somebody from ever being able to participate, there's no chance that they'll earn $1 million. And so, because once they set that precedent, say, like, let's just say an example. Let's say somebody messes up and decides to let DJ Cumberbund on Spotify. And then he winds up blowing up Spotify, winds up with hundreds of millions of plays, and winds up making like $1 million or more. He's now set a precedent saying, hey, this is possible. This is worth spending money on. So,
yeah, obviously. It's just nobody, at least not on Spotify, wants to spend their time on something they think isn't worth the time. Because in order for this to work, you need someone who really understands and loves mashups to go up against the system.
Yeah.
And that's just at least now, that's not going to happen. Nobody wants.
Well, that being said, I'm going to use that as a jumping off point because we need to get back into you and less about like the copyright thing of this. Although this is a whole other show that I want to do. That's me talking to you people like yourself about copyright.
I mean, the whole reason. I mean, there was like a 2-3 year period where I'm almost. That's a direct result of copyright laws. It's not that.
Right. That was because of the SoundCloud thing.
It's not because I wanted to stop. It's because it made it just pointless to make them. Because if nobody can hear them, why would I make them?
Right.
So
let's go back to your humble beginnings there in 2006. What was it that made you go out and get like a thing? Were you familiar with in 2004, DJ Mugg had started that mashup radio thing? Were you a listener at that point?
Yes, I was. And, that, again, a big step when somebody like Muggs actually starts his whole mashup show. Even though his was like very hip-hoppy mashups.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, the whole reason I kept doing mashups was because of Muggs. Because I'm a huge Cypress Hill fan from the Muggs era. Like, his production on there was amazing.
Yeah.
So to get an email from DJ Muggs saying, hey, do you want to be on my mashup show? That was like the biggest thing in the world for me. And that's what kept me going. So props to Muggs.
Before we even get into you sending stuff or Muggs sending you the thing, what was this thing that pushed you into making mashups? Like, what was your first mashup? What was those first couple of like, okay, I have to finally sit down and do this kind of... Tell me that story.
Well, originally, since I've been wanting to make them since the 80s, I just wanted to make one. So I sat down and I tried making one and I failed. Because it turns out it's not that easy.
What did you do? What did you do that was the failure?
I can tell you, but you're not going to believe me.
I'm here. I'm all ears.
But my first attempt was 99 Problems by Jay-Z and 99 Luftballons by Nemo, which somebody else did much better.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, a year before that came out, I tried to make it.
That's the Jay-Zer, yeah.
Yes, and I thought I was so smart.
So how did you fail? What were you using?
I switched to Ableton, and I figured out Ableton is not an intuitive program.
Right. You say you switched to Ableton. That means you were on Acid before that, right?
I did, but the stuff I wanted to do, you just couldn't do on Acid. It just didn't have that. Ableton is an incredible piece of software.
Yes.
If you're making mashups, it has amazing things. Like I can go in and tweak like individual syllables in a track. Yeah. If I feel that syllable is not mashing right, which you can't do in Sony Acid. That's why I switched. At the same time, it wasn't really easy to understand how it works, so I gave up. Then I did my that first mix I did, the Radio Free Lobster.
Yeah, you started off doing mixtapes, kind of.
That was my uneasy listening. That was my uneasy listening, which took about 4 months to do, But in the process, I learned how to use Ableton. So uh, nothing from that mix ever actually made it past that mix. But that making that mix taught me everything I needed to know about how to make mashups on Ableton. So then it was just a question of what do I personally want to hear mashed up,
Yeah.
and let's just do it. So at the time, I know it sounds silly now, but I was listening to a lot of UK dubstep.
That's not silly. The original dubstep was some of the best.
I know you say the word dubstep today, and people are like, oh. But the original dubstep, which started in London by a bunch of crazy British people, sounded nothing at all like, right, Rusko, Scream, people like that. Sounded nothing like Skrillex or anything like that. It had a very, very different feel. It still had that insane bass, but it had a much, much more laid back, no wub wubs or anything like that, or drops. Then, once dubstep hit Los Angeles, the West Coast being the West Coast, they had to put their flamboyant spin on it, and it became the dubstep that we all know. So I was listening to a lot of dubstep and a lot of hip hop from Texas, Swisher House.
Yeah, Paul Wall, baby.
Yeah, Paul Wall, Mike Jones, a lot of good shit was coming out of Texas. So I thought, well, why isn't anybody mashing up UK dubstep with Swisher House? Why? I don't know why. Nobody gives a shit. But I wanted to hear it, so I made one.
And that was Screamin' Sideways with Scream versus Paul Wall. You did that September 3rd, 2006.
My plan was to make one mashup as a proof of concept that I actually made one, and that was it. Because why would I make more? I didn't know there was that big of a scene for it, to be honest. It was like something that I was interested in. So originally I made the mashup and I had no idea where to post, like what to do with it. It's like, okay, I made a mashup now.
And I'm pretty sure GYBO had already died a couple of times. I think they had done like GYBO Part 3, like version 3. Yeah.
I think 4 actually. When I went to GYBO, it was like the 4th.
Well, you didn't go to GYBO first. You went to which space did you go to?
I mean, I can't remember
Was it Mashup Town?
I eventually ended up at Mashup Town, but like that Scream mashup, I don't remember where I posted it.
You definitely had your own like blog. That's where I found a lot of the information. Was your own page on DJLobsterdust.com.
It's possible I posted on that. Maybe a few places online, but really, what blew my mind and what kept me going is after I posted it online, like a month later, I did a Google search for it, and I saw it pop up on other DJs' like track list.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God. People are actually playing this in their sets. Like I never actually imagined that would happen. And it was like maybe 10 DJs, right? But at the time, that was like mind-blowing to me. That I did something in my bedroom, put it out there, and people actually play it to other people. So I'm like, great. Let's see if this next mashup I can get 20 people.
So that being said, on October 24th, because September 3rd is when you released that Screamin' Sideways in 2006. On October 24th, 2006, you said that Holla at Them Girls on Film that's when you got that email from Muggs.
Right. So I guess I was just posting it on my website. No, I must have been posting it to other places. How the hell would Muggs find it?
That's why I'm talking to you.
I don't remember. But yeah, that was the one that caught his attention.
Did you call him? Did you just write him back and say, okay, you can use it? Like, how did that go?
He's yeah, obviously I emailed him right back and I said, honored that you play it. And I think the point was that he wanted he contacted all the people that he was playing on his show because he wanted them to make more, so he would have more stuff to play on his show. So obviously, I said, "You got it. I'll just start cranking them out." And then they started getting played on other radio stations too, and that's really what kept me going. Is that it's like, holy shit, I'm getting the radio without any. I don't have a record deal. I don't have a manager. I don't have anything, but I'm still getting my shit played.
Yeah, you end up getting 3 more songs on DJ Muggs' radio show: "The Crispy Eater," "Stand Up Like a Hurricane," and "When White Horses Cry." All wound up on DJ Muggs' Mashup radio.
Yep, and around that time, I started posting on Mashup Town, which was a very popular mashup blog. And then I don't know how I got the GYBO, but I eventually got the GYBO. And started ascending the ladder.
I want to bring you back to that time period and like really hone in on this time period because, again, you made your first mashup in September of 2006. And October 24th, you did your first spot on Mashup Radio. And then on October 29th, you became WeFM's Bootleg of the Day in France and Mashup Town's Mashup of the Week the same day.
Okay, I don't remember any of these.
And I think that was for the mashup Bring My Own Bell.
Oh,
and Simon Idle said of that, he said, "This happy little song will help you get through your midweek crisis."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot about that mashup. Yeah, that one got a lot of plays in France.
So here you are. You just had made this thing. The West Coast wants you. France wants you. What else? Like, what was going through your head at the time where you're like, yes, okay, I have to do this? Was this like prime motivation to be like, I have to keep cranking these out?
Yeah, pretty much. And at that time, I wasn't sleeping at all because I would get back to work around 7 or 8 in the evening, and I would just sit on the laptop till like 4 or 5 in the morning and just crank them all out. And just wouldn't stop. A lot of it had to do with the radio play, but also a lot of it had to do with the competitive nature of GYBO, which forced everyone to try harder and just keep cranking them out and get to the. You always wanted to get to the top of the page of the. There was like a forum where you post your new mashups, right? Mm-hmm. And like the more feedback you get, like the higher your post gets, right?
Yeah.
The mashups that get the most feedback are always at the top, and the ones that nobody cares about just dwindle to the bottom and disappear forever. So everyone was like trying to get their mashups to get the most feedback to get to the top, and then there was like this extra level of the Bootie Top 10, like who's going to get picked as like the top mashups of that month. So it was very competitive.
So who were your biggest friends and allies on GYBO at that time? The people that were most supportive of you?
Well, definitely Bootie was supportive from the beginning. Most of GYBO was very supportive, I have to say.
That's great. So. Well, here, I'll bring you back. December 5th, 2006, the second track to receive Bootleg of the Day on WeFM. That, again, this is DJ Zebra on 102.3 FM in Paris. Your song Time Is Off the Books, which had Biggie versus the.
Yep.
Oh, no, that was Skyline Operator. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then you said that the was the most underrated band of all time.
Did I say that? Well, I stand by it.
You said one guy, not a band.
It is one guy, Matt something, and who I love, and actually contacted me after that.
Wow, that's great.
And, like he said, you're the only person that ever used my stuff. Like, can you do more? So, I mean, these things are since we never make any real money from these mashups, like having you know.
The respect of people that you respect.
Yeah, so if it's getting bootleg of the day here, or if it's getting radio play from Muggs, or if it's the guy from the Dust saying, you know, can you make more mashups? Like, these are the things that keep you going.
I also, because you're in Queens, and we were talking about Queens earlier, your time as Off the Books was also in the same note. I'm sorry, I got to mix up. You had said that the Beatnuts are the best rappers to come out of Queens.
In this, now I am going to represent Queens. If that was the most underrated band of all time, the Beatnuts are the most underrated hip-hop group of all time. Their stuff is so good. They're from Queens. And they released most of their acapellas, so it was easy to mash. They were friends with Big Pun. I don't know if you remember Big Pun.
Yeah. Puerto Rican. My wife's Puerto Rican, so of course I'm going to know Pun.
Tragically died from his obesity, from his bigness. Yep. So, but they were all in the same Queens crew.
Now, with you said that the album Dusk is one of the best albums of the 90s. Do you still feel that way?
I do. I every once in a while go back to that album. It's a great album.
What makes it so great?
The production on it is insanely good. The songs are good. The lyrics are good. I remember the interview he gave after he made that album, and he said he said, I tried to like cleanse myself. He would do like yoga in the morning and detox and drink tea and be like and nothing was coming out. He had like 6 months. He could not write anything. And he's like, as soon as I started with the booze and the cigarettes, like all the lyrics came, all the music came, all the things came. So that's like one of the things about rock and roll. It's like, it's gotta be dirty. So yeah, that album is kind of.
Let's see.
Anyway, all those mashups you're bringing up are like I completely forgot about them.
Well, like I said, we're diving. This is your life. We're digging deep.
Except the Scream one, which I still listen to every once in a while. I really like the Paul Wall one.
Right. Now, for some reason, I have a note I didn't put down. Maybe you can help me figure out why I wrote this down. 2006 bootlegs.fr, Komar.
Oh, Komar, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if
what about
in that time period, 2006, if that meant anything to you.
At the time, it didn't mean anything to me, but when I eventually made it to Paris, then I became good friends. Those guys from Paris were like amazing. The whole Paris mashup scene was the best mashup scene, I think, for that.
Now,
era.
Before you went to France, though, there was a funny thing. We had Pilchard on earlier, and we talked about how GYBO would have these meetups over in the UK, like GYBOBBQ, and like all the stuff like that. Well, in January 11th of 2007, you went to, and correct me where I'm wrong, but this is what the research that I found. January 11th, 2007, you went to Australia to visit some family. And you actually, because you were on GYBO and knew that stuff was going on, DJ Hickory Dickory Dock was having a backyard barbecue with, let's see who all the people that were there. Marty Batfreak, Wax Audio, Paul Flex Taylor. They were just doing like a DJ setup in the backyard. It was like 30 people. And you called them and said what?
I don't remember. I just remember that I was invited and we showed up. And it was great. Everybody, there was a bunch of CDJs, and everybody brought their CDs, and everybody did like a small mashup set. I mean, if you think about it now, just the fact that Wax Audio was there, and I was there doing
and you were there.
That's worth the price of admission right there, right? But other people were there. They all did really good sets. And I remember that was the first time I heard Autopilot, who's is this Australian mashup producer, who I still play to this day because this stuff is really good.
It's great thinking about that time too, because it's like I know a lot of people might not know the names like DJ Hickory Dickory Dock, but at that time, a few days after this backyard, or it was called GYBOBBQ. Oh, sorry, it's like GYBBQ, or maybe it was GYBOBBQ, but I think it was GYBOBBQ. I can't even say it.
Something like that.
What was it? So DJ Hickory Dickory Dock, not 15 days after that, did his first mix for the Solid Steel radio program with Strictly Kev on Ninja Tune, and he went on to go do like several mixes for them, which was kind of like a mash mix, kind of.
Yeah, and I always really wanted to get on Solid Steel, but I could never get to it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people at that barbecue.
Somebody from Solid Steel contacted me and said they really liked the Radio Free Lobster, but I never got an official invitation to do a set.
Right.
So what are the barbecue?
I was going to say, it's like when you talk about like there was a bunch of people at that barbecue, I really wish, when I talked to DJ Hickory Dickory Dock in preparations for this interview, he turned around and said that it was a time before Facebook when, digital cameras were still kind of expensive. Everybody had little Nokia phones, so nobody had like a lot of cameras. So there really isn't a lot of pictures or anything from that. As a matter of fact, he was expressing that it was such a weird time that even the CD decks were the ones with the pop-up lids that you guys used.
Yep. I mean, I might have a old photo somewhere.
Oh, from that barbecue? I would love to see it if you ever find that, because at some point I think I'm going to try to get.
I did have a disposable camera on me, so I definitely took pictures. But
well, you definitely took pictures of the bay, because you've got pictures on your Flickr account from that trip. So.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you flew immediately from there to Hollywood, right? From Australia?
What?
Because on your Flickr, you've got pictures immediately dated the same day of you in Hollywood with the same kind of family members. It was is it Avia? Who was the little girl?
Yeah, that's my niece. But in Hollywood?
You were in Hollywood, right in front of the Hollywood sign, and you're there by Hollywood Lake.
I mean, I wasn't at the Hollywood sign, but I wasn't with my family. I think what's confusing you is that the time I uploaded to Flickr is not necessarily the time that it happened.
Well, I mean, that's why we have these conversations.
That Hollywood sign picture, which now I remember, that was just a trip I had to LA. It wasn't with my family. So it wasn't like I was in Australia and then the next day I was in Hollywood. It was just I uploaded a picture of me in Australia, and then the next day I uploaded a picture of me in Hollywood. But I didn't get to Hollywood till a lot later.
Right. So to get back into this, again, you started in September of 2006, and it says by January 2007, you were already getting accolades like you're Mashup Town's second mashup of the week. Somebody proclaimed you were one of the premier mashup producers in North America.
Who?
Whoever the admin was. So I mean, I'm assuming that's who was the admin of Mashup Town.
No idea. I don't know who was.
I'm gonna have to look more into that. Maybe somebody someone can tell me in the comments here, the chat. So,
I mean, no, I was just doing my thing, making mashups, and people used to like. I think some people just have. If you look at, let's say, a Shmoli, just a natural born talent to do good mashups, right? I mean.
So within this whirlwind time, though, Adriana or Deidre, who was it that reached out to you and said, "Hey, you live in New York City. We should do a Bootie New York City"?
Back then, there was no Deidre and Adriana. There was just a one unit called A plus D.
Okay.
That spoke with one voice back then. And they contacted me.
Was that in 2006 or was that after?
I really don't remember the year. I mean, I barely remember what happened last year. You think I can remember what happened in 2000 and whatever? I just remember they said, "Hey, we're coming to New York to do a gig, and we'd like to meet up." And at the time, I was like, "Oh my God, these people actually get paid to fly to another city, play mashups." It was like some fancy club or whatever. So that was really like the next level. If you're doing mashups, that's like the next level. You want to actually.
And they asked you if you wanted to DJ, right?
So yeah, they Well, first thing from GYBO, since they only had those small thumbnails, I was sure I was going to meet two very cute women. And then when I'm like, oh, wait a minute. But also, back then, whenever I would do booty gigs, my mom would always ask me, "Who's that cute redheaded girl?" And I'm like, "Mom, that's not a girl. That's a guy." She's like, "What? But he looks like a girl." I'm like, "Yeah." Well, and she's like, "Well, why would you do that?"
Because people can be who they want to be.
She did not understand the concept at all.
Right.
Now but it was just funny. So anyway, they sat down and they said, "Oh yeah, Bootie NYC is happening," and like, there's not really anybody in New York making the kind of mashups that Bootie likes. So they said, "We're gonna do a Bootie New York, and we need DJs. Will you do it?" And like I said, since it was like the next level.
Yeah. And had you ever DJ'd before that?
Well, here's the thing, which Adriana's going to learn for the first time. They asked me specifically, "You're a DJ, right? You've done this before?" And I said, "Yes, of course I've done this before. I've been doing this for years." That was not true. I had actually never DJed before, except for with like a regular CD player, where you press. Like, I've never done a DJ set, but I figured.
But you were like, "Yes, I'm a pro."
I'm never going to do Bootie New York if I told him I never DJed before. So I'm just going to tell him I DJed before. Get a bunch of turntable CDJs. But at the time, CDJs were cheap. Like the most basic Pioneers you could actually afford.
Yeah.
And I had 3 weeks of practice, which I did every day. And that was it. But to this day, nobody knew that it was all a sham. It was all a hoax. But they say fake it till you make it.
Well, right? You faked it and you made it.
I had to fake it. Luckily that night, April Steve was there. Freddie King of Pants was there. So very good vibe. There was a line around the block to get in. I almost didn't make it to the DJ booth because it was so fucking packed. You could just not make it to the DJ. It was that packed. So a very good experience for the first set.
So in 5 months,
700 people.
I want to bring you back here real quick. In 5 months, you put out your first mashup, and in 5 months, you were, pretty much headlining your own Bootie New York City night for 800 people.
That's what happened.
Yeah, that became a monthly. And you had people, the next one in March, because that was February 2007 was the first one. The next one in March had Party Ben and Linlow from Mash Avenue, which is what became Bootie Boston later. And then in April, they had Ken Lo. And then you just continued to do this all throughout the rest of that year. And then well past that. Matter of fact, you've still been doing Bootie New York City parties as late as 2018, right?
Yep. And, San Francisco and LA whenever I can.
Like, I thought it was big that in 2007, May 2007, you guys had a DJ Reset, who is known for being the mashup artist who put out the first commercial mashup out, or 12-inch, which is that mixed business. Was it Beck versus who? It was Beck versus Korn. What? No, I'm sorry.
Jay-Z? I think it was a Jay-Z one. But
it wasn't Jay-Z. I've got the 12-inch over here. I just don't have the time to dig it out because we only have about 16 minutes left, and there's so much left we have to talk about.
Okay.
You made it to the Toronto Star anti-hit list in 2007 of March, and then you did, in 2007, Guttorm Helvik, I'm sorry if I messed up that name, made a video for your Walking Out Your Girlfriend mashup, which then got, that video got the attention of Pitchfork, where they decided to write something like this. A guy named Mark Hogan said, "It's probably kind of cheating when your mashup puts together 3 songs that basically don't have tunes."
Well, he's wrong.
Well, the funny thing is that I'm sure either you or Adrian or someone there at Bootie then spun that into that you made one of Pitchfork's favorite mashups and used that as an advertising tagline for years.
It's true. It was one of their favorite mashups. They couldn't. obviously being Pitchfork, they just can't say, "Oh, we like this mashup with Avril Lavigne in it," because they're fucking hipsters. So they have to, in a way. But I actually wrote that guy an email, and I thanked him for putting the mashup there, and I said, I do a lot of indie stuff too. Let me send you some indie stuff.
Yeah.
So I sent them. I did you remember the album leaf, like this indie kind of electronic, down tempo. I did an album leaf mashup, which he posted on Pitchfork, and then the guy from Album Leaf emailed me and said he really liked it.
That's awesome.
So, never got an email from Avril Lavigne though. Shame.
She's too punk rock, man. She's too punk rock.
I don't know. I mean, like the Britney Spears one was posted on the Britney Spears website.
Let me move along. In 2007, Rocket Man and Dub made it to the Rob da Bank show on BBC Radio 1.
Yep. Again, someone I always looked up to, Rob da Bank, and all the BBC stuff he's done.
Yeah.
I can't remember how I think he stumbled on it on some blog, and he put it in on his show. And then I sent him a bunch of other stuff that he played. So he was very supportive.
In 2007, July 9th, you DJ'd in Monterrey, Mexico?
Oh, yeah.
What was that?
That was interesting.
Was that a booty gig?
So, kinda. Because, so now you're talking... This was when mashups were kind of hip with the hipsters.
Right.
And there was a huge music event in Mexico, which spanned multiple cities, multiple venues and stuff. And this promoter contacted Bootie and said, "I want all the mashup DJs here in Mexico playing," which was great. They pay for the flight and everything, and you get to play in Mexico. And basically, what it was is Camel cigarettes and Marlboro cigarettes had a huge fucking war over Mexican turf. So I think this was sponsored by one of the cigarette companies, and basically they just wanted as much promotional gigs as possible around this festival.
Yeah.
Right. So it was so when we got there, it was this one promoter who really liked mashups, and he basically convinced these companies to bring us all there as part of this promotional thing for this. The first gig I did, we show up, and the club owner, didn't even know we were coming. He was like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, we're supposed to play a gig here." It's like, "Well, I never heard about it." So, that's typical Mexico for you, So it was a gig in front of a club full of people that had no idea that they were going to listen to mashups. So that didn't go well. And then the second club, the same thing happened. They were like, "Who the fuck are you?" And so I played an hour, but it was just all mashups, right? It wasn't what they normally played at the club. So they actually kicked me off after an hour and brought up this DJ that played Spice Girls and stuff. But that's what the crowd wanted. So... I mean, I had a great time in Mexico because they took me out and stuff. But those gigs were just a complete shit show. And from what I remember, Earworm was sent to another Mexican city and was basically stranded or didn't have any way to come back or something like that. Somebody got sent to Mexico and
never came back.
Just left hanging. It would just show up in Mexico and nobody's there or something like that. It was very disorganized, but it just goes to show you back then how hip mashups were.
Right.
They were let's bring all these mashup DJs from America to Mexico.
So let's move on. In 2008, in August 2008, you wound up joining Twitter for the beginnings. That's your first tweet was in August of 2008. That being said, at the same time, while you're self-publishing yourself on the internet, somebody used you, an entire paragraph about you, a woman named Holly Sefri, in a book called Career Building Through Music, Video, and Software Mashups. She mentioned your "She Is Glamorous" music video, saying that you had gotten 200,000 views in less than 2 years, just as an example of your music and whatever else like that. And then shortly after that, on that same, or within a month, you were you did the Q&A for Some Assembly Required, DJ, your Lobsterdust thing. I had John on a previous show. You can definitely go to his site and still read that interview. In 2009, June 6th, I'm jumping ahead, you went to Bootie Paris. Can you tell me about that?
Yep. Yeah, I was still a student back then. I went back to Israel because I had to get my visa renewed, and there was some mistake, and I ended up, they said, well, your visa is renewed, but not for another 4 months, so you can't go back to America for another 4 months. So I was kind of stuck. And I said, okay, let me just, I know there's Bootie, it's like represented in almost every European country, so why don't I just go to Europe and play some gigs, and I'll just crash at whatever. So I emailed all those guys. I said, if I come to Europe, do I have a place to play? Do I have a place to crash? And they're like, sure. So that's what I did. Just showed up with a backpack in Paris.
Now, this was around the same time that you made your Staying Hot BG's Nelly mashup.
No, that was way after.
Was that not 2009?
No, that's got to be later. And I think the first Paris was 2008, because I was in Paris twice.
Okay.
The first time...
Well, I know that in October 2009, you immediately went, or later that year, you guys brought down Grand Panini with DJ Reno for Bootie New York City. And then in 2009, that same, I think the next month was DJ Morgoth. And then in November of 2009, your mashup Nergaga got Bootie their first cease and desist.
Yes. But I put that mashup out. It didn't actually get any feedback when I put it out, but like 4 months later, somehow it went viral. And that was on everywhere. That MTV posted it. A bunch of other big media outlets posted it. So obviously, once, since when you're under the radar, you can do whatever you want. But once it gets exposure, the second it gets exposure, you get hit with that cease and desist.
Right.
So
because you might actually make some money.
So I had to take it off my website. Bootie had to take it off their website. Do
you remember whose side that was? Was that Lady Gaga's side or was that Nirvana's side?
The letter came from EMI.
Of course it came from EMI.
I remember EMI owns the Nirvana.
Right. Because I was about to say, because I know that, was it Lady Gaga had worked with Bootie to put out an official mashup kind of CD.
Yeah, Lady Gaga did play it when she was starting out. She played the Bootie LA. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was some legal mumbo jumbo because hundreds of people had mashed up Nirvana using the instrumental, and nobody got a cease and desist. I was one of the first that used the vocals, only the Nirvana vocals over a different instrumental. And then as soon as that happened, they sent a cease and desist. And I think someone told me they can only do it if you mash up the vocals, but not the instrumentals. Like they own some parts of it.
They just leave you guessing.
Whatever the stupid reason was, once it got attention, they immediately ruined the internet.
Tell me about what you did with the vocals. Did you rip like a DVD for a 5.1? Was it a DIY acapella or did you filter it?
This was interesting because the video game Rock Band had come out. And I remember reading that it was going to have, inside the game, all the multi-tracks for the different instruments.
Yeah.
So you can play the drummer, you can play the guitar player, bass players, vocalist. So I'm like, holy shit. And then I saw the list of songs, right? I have Talking Heads and all these, and Nirvana. And I'm like, this is the treasure chest that we've all been waiting for. It's all these acapellas and instrumentals and stems that we never had access to are on this game. There was just one problem. In order to get those songs on the game, the developer had to encrypt all the audio because the labels were worried that people were going to do exactly what I was going to do and grab those multitracks. So you can encrypt code inside, like it's a computer thing.
Yeah.
You can just encrypt code. So I went out, immediately bought the game. You know, I'm like, no problem. I'll just stick the DVD into my computer and just get all these audio files. Nope. Then I look at them and they're all encrypted. So I scoured the internet and found this hacker from Australia who used to be a video game developer. So he knew all the tricks. And I said, could you actually decrypt this? And he's like, let me take a look at it. And in 5 minutes, he decrypted it. And he sent me everything. He sent me like a little code thingy where I could decrypt it myself. As a result, now I tried to keep that a secret, but obviously everybody in the mashup scene immediately got hold of it and started ripping it. So that guy got hit with a threat for a $5 million lawsuit.
What?
Yeah.
I guess he published his findings, or how did they find him?
Because that fucking program he sent me, that was his name, because he's a hacker, so he puts his hacker handle on it. And then they figured out that he used to be a developer, and they said, and he still is a developer, and they said, well, we're gonna sue you for millions of dollars, we're gonna take away all your developer licenses, and unless you tell us how you did it,
right?
And then we'll drop the lawsuit. So as a result, he could no longer decrypt stems for us, and somebody else had to hack it. So there was like a year where you couldn't get any rock band stems. But the funny thing is, no matter, every time they put out a patch to keep people from ripping it, just for fun, he would crack it in like 10 minutes. And he would send me like a snippet just to show me. It's like, nah, these people, I can still crack this. And then when the Beatles put out Beatles Rock Band, then it was like, because the Beatles have always guarded their masters like under lock and key. So they hired a special company to decrypt it even more. And they paid them like $2 million for a foolproof, impossible to break decryption system that nobody would ever get their hands on these masters. So when that happened, I contacted that hacker and I said, here, let me send you the files. Do you think it's impossible to hack? And in fucking 2 hours, he cracked it.
Of course.
And now you can get all those Beatles stems anywhere you want. But the fact that they paid so much money to be able to crack it in like 2 hours was just hilarious. Of course, he wouldn't send me all those Beatles stems because he was worried about the lawsuits, but...
Well, Lobsterdust, we're going to have you on another time to continue this.
Mashups you hear today
What?
Do use those rock backs. I mean, at least half the mashups that you listen to today use rock band.
Yeah.
So that was an important thing.
I definitely want to continue this conversation another time. Hopefully you'll be our guest again at some point.
I don't leave the house. What can I do? I'm always here. You can just Skype me. Unless I'm sleeping.
For sure, because I want to get into, and just to give a quick overview in this last minute that we have left, I was just about to jump into, you doing Brisbane, Australia, stories about going to Bootie Rio, doing Bootie Paris, and then DJing in Russia, your time doing the movie. What was the name of the movie?
Just Go.
It was an Adam Sandler flick, and it was you with, who else? It was... Party Ben,
Party Ben, and Earworm.
Right, and DJ Y, alias JY.
He came up at the last 3 days because we had an emergency and we needed.
I wanted to read something real quick.
Both Ben and Earworm wanted their name, they wanted to just quit the whole thing. I mean, Earworm quit. Party Ben wanted to quit but couldn't. Because they forced him to fulfill his contract. I wanted to quit, but I couldn't. But yeah, it was me, Party Ben, and Ewan.
I wanted to get into just something real quick, and that is that the licensing for that was such a nightmare that one of the mashups that you wanted to use was actually hold on, I had this written down. It was one that you had already had, but you lost the you couldn't get credit for Daft Punk, and you couldn't get credit for hold on, I've got this right here. Oh, that it was your you wanted to use your mashup Funky Smoke, and they couldn't get Daft Punk or Usher.
That was the whole reason they hired me, was to do Funky Smoke.
Right.
Like, we had all those discussions. It was just, that was like the center.
And because they couldn't do that, they instead had you remake some DJ Zebra mashups.
Yes, and this happened like a week before the movie's supposed to come out.
Oh no,
it was insane. And
did you talk to DJ Zebra about this?
Only after, because they wouldn't. Here's the thing: the reason they wouldn't use DJ Zebra is because DJ Zebra had management.
Oh.
He said, "Listen, the second DJ Zebra hears about this, we're gonna have to pay a shit ton of money to deal with his management." And we are a week before fucking the rap, because before final mix. So you cannot fuck this up for us and bring DJ Zebra into the mix, right?
Right.
And having signed the contract with Sony, I had to do it. The contract specifically said, whatever songs they give you to mash, that's what you mash, right? Even though all our discussions were about the Daft Punk one, when they changed their mind and then they said, no, you got to do this, it's like, what do I do now? So, plus at the time, our real job was post-production, so I couldn't breach my contract with fucking Sony and be blacklisted in the whole post-production industry for breaching contracts and causing a movie not to come out.
Right.
And stuff like that. So I was between a rock and a hard place.
I can only imagine that's crazy.
But I mean, it was a nightmare for everybody. Like the guy in charge of the soundtrack, this guy called Michael Bill, who did the soundtrack for Top Gun, Footloose, and Beverly Hills Cop.
So,
like, no one.
I want to add to that real quick. Let me just tell you this. Looking up Mike Dilbeck was so amazing because not only did he worked on the soundtrack for Tron, for Caddyshack 1 and 2. So that ties you together like with all the yacht rock stuff. He did the soundtrack for Over the Top, the Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling movie, which if you know anything about that soundtrack, it was entirely produced by Giorgio Moroder. And Michael Dilbeck arranged for him to, here's Giorgio Moroder doing songs for Asia, Eddie Money, Kenny Loggins, and Sammy Hagar.
Yep.
And so you look at some of these choices that Michael Dilbeck made back in the day, and it's very, very much in a mashup aesthetic, especially when you look at, in 1989, he was in charge of the original Batman soundtrack. And shortly after, a couple of years after the movie came out, Prince came out to Rolling Stone and said that the album, the soundtrack for that, was originally supposed to be a kind of a mashup album. And the fact is that it was going to be him and Michael Jackson singing different perspectives, whereas Prince was going to be the Joker and Michael Jackson was supposed to be Batman. And Prince would have sung funk for the villains while Michael Jackson would have sung ballads for the heroes. Yeah,
I mean, Michael Dilbeck is definitely the man when it comes to soundtracks. And he was the only person in Hollywood that could actually pull this off.
It was fascinating. Yeah, he was doing all this stuff.
But here's the thing. For movies and music, it's a whole different licensing procedure. It's called a sync license. It costs a lot more. You need a lot more people to sign the contracts. Yeah. So, for example, for Party the Band, they wanted to do Chasing Cars, which is the Police and Snow Patrol. Yep. Everybody knows that match, right? So, so obviously Sting being Sting, he never allows for anybody to mash up his stuff. And the only thing he ever allowed was Puffy, right? Remember that one? So Adam Sandler called up Sting and personally asked for a personal favor to let him use Every Breath You Take in the movie, right? Had he not done that, there would have never been clearance. And even when he did that, Sting wanted like $1 million.
Right.
Then it gets better because then all the two other members of the Police find out, and they say, "Oh, well, whatever Sting's getting, we want the exact same song." So you just tripled the cost of that song, and you haven't even done half because now you got to talk to Snow Patrol. As it happens, Snow Patrol despise and hate that mashup with a passion because it got more radio play than their original version, right? I mean, on the radio, they would only play Party Ben's version. They hate it. So they had to give him so much money just to release that, right?
Yeah.
Like an obscene amount of money.
Well, that's when rich people have fuck all money that they can just kind of throw stuff at that.
That's not the thing, because then the guy in Sony, who's in charge of accounting, calls up the fucking president of Sony and says, "What the fuck is Adam Sandler doing, blowing all our millions on these stupid songs when we can get free music from Sony Music?" Right. It's like, why are you wasting? You just wasted $4 million on one mashup, and we can get a whole soundtrack for free. So that was causing him, Michael, a lot of headaches. Like the fact that he had to, no matter what price tag he would put, the artist always wanted more. And if it wasn't the artist, it was the record label. If it wasn't the record label, it was the person who wrote the song. They all have to get paid. They all have to sign. So at the end of the day, after all the drama and things and the fact that we had to change the whole soundtrack like the 2 weeks before that, he told me, "Listen, I'm never doing a mashup in the movie again. You can just forget about it." It's just, he was like, "I'm having chest pains. I think I'm having a heart attack. I'm getting phone calls every fucking, I just don't want to do it anymore." So, but he was really into it when we started. Right? He understood what we were doing. And he would get on the phone and just personally talk to everyone involved to do a personal favor to him and release the music. So he was the only person that could pull this off in Hollywood. He was like, "It's not worth it." Then the movie bombed, so there was no soundtrack. So the reason you don't hear mashups in movies is because of that failure of that Adam Sandler movie. Because while we were working on it, I remember he told me, "Listen, there's a lot of people who want us to do more mashups for their upcoming movies." Like Kevin James?
Yeah. Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Yeah. He already approached Michael and said, "I want you to do." It's like, yeah, I heard what you guys are doing. Like, let's talk about my next movie. So we already had another movie lined up right after the Sandler one. And a lot of people in Hollywood were keeping an eye on it to see how it goes. And then it flopped.
Right.
Plus, the execs hated the idea because they didn't want to pay money for music they could get free.
Right.
Michael Dilbeck almost had a heart attack and died because of the stress. So that was it. That was it for mashups in Hollywood. So
that's it.
Maybe in the future, some new young filmmaker, like a new Tarantino, will come up and say, "I want this mashup in my movie," and he's going to make it happen.
Well, so here's a quick thing real quick. And that is that I don't understand how the industry that is Hollywood can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on something that winds up flopping in the box office. But then they know for a fact that if they put it out on VHS or DVD or like a streaming service, that a lot of times some of these movies that flop won't go on to be cult classics or go on to make untold millions past that time.
But we are talking about Adam Sandler here. Have you ever seen an Adam Sandler movie?
Now, our tastes aside, Adam Sandler is a pretty popular person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been made all those movies.
Yeah, well, while working on it, I learned that, did you know that Adam Sandler makes more money than Will Smith and Tom Cruise combined?
That says a lot about our country and about the world in general.
Well, he's not as famous as he used to be like 10 years ago, but he's still, that's the reason this whole project actually happened, because Sandler's name was attached to it. Michael Dilbeck was attached to it.
Yeah.
We could actually have pulled this off, but it didn't work. If you're asking why wouldn't they release the music?
No, that's I wasn't going to go there. I was going to say is they should have, because A, they spent a ton of money on it. B, I wanted to highlight that one of the things that they did, and the thing that I'm maddest about is that these studio produced mashups aren't available for us, because we've got Party Ben's Tender Umbrella and we've got Snow Patrol mashups in their rough forms that Party Ben puts out on his website. But the way that they were cleaned up for the movie is in a very high definition way. Matter of fact, for Tender Umbrella, they hired Jelly Bean Benitez to come in and do production over top of that.
Yep. Because they wanted that in the trailer, so it had to be.
I mean, it's sparkly. That Tender Umbrella that's in the trailer is gorgeous.
And and originally, obviously, the whole point was to put out a soundtrack, but because the movie flopped, it didn't happen. And then, so for example, the Chasing Cars by Party Ben, one of the most famous and loved mashups of all time, exists in its pristine, legal, beautiful form. Because the contract said we had to deliver a full mix, start to finish, not just a snippet.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it would be the property of Sony as soon as we delivered it, right? So they have it. They have all these mashups.
So my call to anybody watching who might be,
in order to release them, they would have to start the whole round of negotiations again because it's not a movie. So they would have to call up Sting again, and they would have to deal with the police again, and they would have to deal with Snow Patrol again, who would also say no again.
Right.
So they're like, we would have to put in to get this mashup released is going to be so much more than the money we're going to make from this mashup. Unless maybe 20 years from now, copyright laws will be completely different, and they're like, shit, let's just put it out there, you know.
Well, if anything ever happens to that regard, and somebody who's watching this interview right here, way into the future or whatnot, let's just say, let's put out the soundtrack for Just Go With It, Adam Sandler from 2010.
Oh, don't put the soundtrack, because I specifically asked for my name to be removed from that soundtrack.
And you're in the credits.
And once you sign the contract wasn't just one-sided, it was two-sided. So Party Ben insisted that in the contract, every mashup producer that mixed a mashup had to have his name in the credits. That was something that Party Ben put in. So now I can't. So Michael's like, "What do you want me to do?" It says in the contract that we have to put your name in there. Like, how can we remove it? Like, we have to break our contract. So that became a huge mess. So I'm actually glad the movie bombed because I don't want my name on it because I didn't get to make the mashup.
Right, because you were making somebody else's mashups. You're remaking mashups.
And if they do remake it, they have to put DJ Zebra on it, right? Which was what they were supposed to do in the first place, but they were afraid that that Zebra was going to torpedo the whole movie. But now, since we know the movie was a flop, they don't have anything to worry about. They could just release it as a DJ Zebra mashup.
Right.
But
well, unfortunately, we've gone way over our time. We need to end this because Adriana's doing the mashup listening hour. I want to make sure that.
And we only got to 2009.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll have you back on, and we can talk more about all the other stuff that you've done since, because you didn't stop in a time when everybody turned around and said, "Oh, mashups are dead," and "Oh, there's no forums," and "Oh, there's no whatever else like that." You kept going, and you're still going.
Yep. Because there's always something that reignites the spark, and today it's Twitch. Twitch is what got not just me, like a lot of mashup because of Twitch. So,
well, in 2009, you were asked, "How would you like to be remembered?" by John Nelson, and you said,
"Where are all these interviews that I don't even?"
You said, "I'd like to be that guy who made good bootlegs. If I'm still on people's iPods 10 years from now, that's good enough for me."
Okay, well, iPods are do no longer exist, and I can't be on people's Spotify. But I do get emails all the time that people do remember me. It's unfortunate because they can't really listen to the mashups they've been cleansed from the internet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try and post all my mashups on Bandcamp because I heard Bandcamp doesn't delete.
Yeah, there's a lot of people actually even charging for mashups and supposedly making money. I don't know how long they can flaunt that.
I would put them all on with a name your own price. So if you want it for free, you can get it for free. If you want to put in a couple cents, you can put it. I was gonna do it was gonna happen, except unfortunately 2 weeks ago I heard that they are starting to delete mashups now. Now I hope it's just an isolated case where just one track pissed somebody off. So I'm gonna try and post everything on Bandcamp. I'm gonna try and post everything back on YouTube under an alias. And I'm gonna try and post everything back on SoundCloud under an alias. so at least people can find it and listen to
Well,
it.
one of the things I'm finding important, and I think Bootie learned this with Twitch when we first got the scare of like, oh, Twitch is going to bust DJs, is that when you get a large audience on one platform, you need to be able to funnel them to another account so that if one gets shut down, you'll also have that same following on another account. They'll know where to keep, hold on to you.
Yeah, which I should have done with the SoundCloud, but I never did.
Anyway, over Hangout, I'm going to end this with everybody. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Masters of Mash. We're about 15 minutes over. We're going to raid here in just a second to go to Mashup Listening Hour with Adriana A. over on the Bootie Mashup channel. What are you saying, Over?
We'll do a part 2.
Oh no, we're definitely going to do a part 2. We'll definitely have you back.
We didn't even cover the part where Shmoley came to crash in my house.
Be sure to tune in next week when our guest will be Lance Lockarm. Talk to you next week.